Good afternoon. Welcome to our special meeting of the Castle County Board of Commissioners, October 28th. Today we will be looking at an additional map as far as redistricting. We have several options that we can think about as we go through the meeting that we'll need to decide after we get our final for the map that we haven't seen yet or haven't been presented. We can decide on a map today that we would like to have for the public hearing, one map, if we desire to do that. Doesn't mean that will end up being the map, because after the public hearing, we may decide that's not the map we want to use, or we may start all over. But whatever we do, we have to move quickly because this is time important here. The second option we have is to present the maps that we have, all of them, for the public hearing. And then after that, it will give us more clarity as to which map we would decide to do. So any other options that we have, County Manager?
Well, I think that adequately lays out the options that the board has, yes.
Okay. All right, so with no further ado, then we'll turn it over to our County Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it pleases the board, I'd like just to go through a quick introduction with the materials that we have. First, I have a real quick slideshow from the North Carolina Board of Elections, talking about what is redistricting. It's the process of redrawing district boundaries every 10 years following the decennial United States Census. It's done to ensure that voting power and representation are distributed equally based on population. Congressional and legislative redistricting is performed by the General Assembly. County, municipal, school board redistricting is performed by the General Assembly or governing body, which is this Board of Commissioners, or processes prescribed in a court order or a consent decree in some cases. Why do we redistrict? There's a legal basis for it. For both the U.S. and state constitutions will require it. The North Carolina Senate and North Carolina House, the General Assembly must redistrict at a first regular session convening after the return of the decennial census of population taken by order of Congress. For municipalities and counties specifically, if a county Board of Commissioners is divided into districts, it may define electoral boundaries to address substantial inequalities of population among the districts, and district boundaries must be as nearly equal as practicable and composed of territory within a contiguous or continuous boundary. So the legal considerations are equal population equality among districts, one person, one vote principle. Congressional districts, no safe margin of population deviation. Legislative districts, the North Carolina Constitution interpreted by Stevenson's versus Bartlett to require plus or minus 5% deviation. So how is substantial inequality determined? You take the population of the jurisdiction, divide it into the number of districts, that gives you the ideal population. Then you apply the 2020 census numbers to current old districts and calculate population deviation. For example, Electiontown, North Carolina has 4 electoral districts and a 2020 census population of 10,000. And you can see the numbers. The ideal population is 2,500 for each electoral district. There's a 10% threshold, and that's a riskier standard. 10% establishes a prima facie violation of one person, one vote principle, and the jurisdiction now has to prove that there is a rational and legitimate policy for inequality in the districts. There's a plus or minus 5% threshold that I spoke about earlier, based on North Carolina specific case law, and that's a more conservative calculation. So other legal considerations are compactness, contiguity, to preserve communities of interest and minimize split precincts. And you can see there's a few graphic representations of that below. Just a little bit on racial and political gerrymandering. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there's fair ways and there's unfair ways to form districts. And you can see the way that that's done in this illustration. Restrictions on redistricting, racial and political gerrymandering. Equal protection clause is violated when race is the predominant consideration in drawing district lines and the legislature subordinates traditional districting principles to race in order to create minority districts without a compelling state interest. In Caswell County's case, we do have a order from the court, a consent decree from the court that requires that Caswell County have 2 minority districts. That consent decree was agreed to by the Board of Commissioners, the Board of Education, and the Board of Elections. So racial and political gerrymandering. Political gains, generally a valid aim of redistricting or protecting or enhancing a position of a political party, interest group, incumbent, or potential candidate. However, these claims are still justicable. And I think that is about as far as we need to go with that specific presentation. I want to now share a different screen. I want to show the board. These are the minority census tracts that we have in the county. You can see there's several of these census tracts that are widely dispersed throughout the county. However, you can see there are some populations where the census tracts are grouped together and they're more compact than in other places. This is what originally the Piedmont Triad Regional Council presented to the Board of Commissioners as a potential district, as the potential redrawn districts. This is the most recent version of the districts that meet a lot of the requirements. These are the statistics associated with each proposal that's been given to the board today. You can see that the first proposed district by PTRC, there was a little less than 3% between districts. You can see that by the 97.16%. The next version, version 2, you see basically the same thing. The most recent version is 98.13%. The minority majority districts are districts number 3 and 4. In the previous versions, they were 52 and 51%. Version 2 is 51 and 50%. And then in the most recent version 3, it's 52.12 and 52.48% minority in those districts. Here again, that's the most recent district map of the most recently drawn districts. I do have I do want to go over the process that the board's been through. Once again, the process for redrawing the electoral districts, it is a requirement by the state of North Carolina following a decennial census for those counties that elect commissioners by district. We contracted with the Piedmont Triad Regional Council to redraw Caswell County's electoral districts. PTRC extrapolated the data from the 2020 decennial census and redrew the Caswell County electoral district lines, and they were presented to the Board of Commissioners as proposed districts. The Caswell County Board of Commissioners reviewed the newly drawn maps and determined they had additional priorities that were not met with the newly drawn version or proposed version. County manager worked with PTRC and staff to revisit the proposed district map. Determination was that to meet the priorities of the board, the newly drawn districts would have to substantially change. After these substantial changes were made, the county manager presented the altered map to the Board of Commissioners in a special meeting. After the review of the maps, I received several comments from commissioners and from the public, which necessitated several changes, additional changes to the districts. The result is the version 6, V6, that you have already reviewed today. Do you want to go over just a few more things? So the Board of Commissioners' priorities for redrawing electoral districts. Number 1, keep all sitting commissioners serving in a district role currently in a new redrawn district. This does force districts 1, 2, and 4 to commingle on the western part of the county, and much of that is due to the fact that the populations are centered in certain areas, and population density is heavy in some areas and not heavy in others. One district, districts 2 and 4 commingle, and 1 must move north and 1 district must move south. The second priority was to keep populations in each district as even as possible in each district. The current electoral districts, the ones you have today, are 16% out of balance between the most populated district and the least populated district. This indicates an almost 7% population shift in our county. To get within 2% and 5% here against the target of population in electoral districts, we must follow more than just roads. Bodies of water, township lines, and municipal lines must be used to separate districts. And the third priority for the Board of Commissioners was to maintain 2 minority-majority districts within Caswell. And that's based on the 1989 consent decree. The minority population has declined in Caswell County in the last 10 years by 506 residents. The African-American population has declined by 1,187. Other minority populations have increased by 681. And these, among other things, has caused the population shift that we spoke about earlier. Both districts must share the census, both minority and majority census tracts or electoral districts must share census tracts in Yanceyville to maintain the minority majority districts. And I'll show you the minority populations by township. And then if you look at the percent of minority population as it relates to the total minority population within the county, you can see that out of our top 5 minority populations exist in Yanceyville, Locust Hill, Stony Creek, Milton, and Pelham. Therefore, you would not be surprised to see the minority districts form in those areas. Legal considerations: compactness, contiguous, preserves communities of interest, one person, one vote, dissent decree, and it minimizes split precincts. The PTRC proposed districts meets the legal requirements for redistricting, but not the priorities of the Board of Commissioners. Other versions meet the priorities of the Board of Commissioners and may contain some deficiencies in other areas. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to pull the map back up and let you look at the map, whatever you would like to do.
Yes, let's see the map.
Okay.
This last map.
This is the latest map, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the map.
Can you enlarge it any?
But
Or we'll be able to see it.
you're not going to be able to see, as I explained in the last meeting,
Okay.
I can't export the map so the road names are not on there. I can, give me just one second. Can, however, bring it up. In share screen. So this is the web version. You can see, I wanted the board to know too, that there's 615 unique census tracts within the county. So when you look at a census tract, and I'll highlight one here for you. Doesn't do a great job of highlighting. You can see with that highlighted census tract, you get different values. You get the total population, the minority population, out of the total population. So are there any questions? Does the board have any questions?
Yeah, I have one. I know that mine just changed quite a bit in the last year. My thing is, when we held the last meeting, I had 51%. You know, today, I think I'm looking at, I got 52.1%, so right?
That's correct.
Okay, my thing is, we're gonna bring crossover here in Yanceyville. My precincts has been built in Samoa. And you know, and I know, people's not gonna come from Yanceyville to Samoa and vote. My question is, can we fix it where they could vote in the precinct they are in? I know in the past, we have early voting. You can pull up any district and vote by the same building. Now, my question is, can this be fixed that way to what we move in any district?
So it's my understanding that voters vote in the voting precinct in which they live.
Okay.
Okay. So if they live in the Yanceyville voting precinct, they vote in the Yanceyville voting precinct. They may be voting for multiple commissioner districts. As you can see, Yanceyville has pieces of District 1, well, not so much District 3, but 1, 3, and 4. So Yanceyville has 3 different commissioner districts in it, the Yanceyville voting precinct. So all of those voters would vote in the Yanceyville voting precinct. I think the county has close to 16,000 registered voters. And each voting precinct that we have can handle, I think I spoke to the elections director today, and he said about 3,000 registered voters. If you expand over 3,000 registered voters, you have to open up an additional precinct. With 3,000 registered voters, we have 10, I think, voting precincts or voting sites.
Right.
Which would mean we have the capacity to handle about 30,000 registered voters, and we have about 16,000 registered voters within the county. Does that answer your question? I do want to pass along the fact that if we do have to open up additional voting places or voting precincts, if that does become a necessity, it will require additional funding from the board for the Board of Elections for a number of things. And I think redistricting in and of itself is going to require some increase in funding for the Board of Elections, just from because of the mailings and contact notifications that will have to go out.
Would those be going out to only the people that are experiencing change?
Yes. Anybody that experiences a change, those notices would go out. This is a pretty dramatic change. Any of the options that you've looked at so far have pretty dramatic changes.
How could you show us the statistics for version 6 as far as equality or population count
Yes,
for each one, and again?
yes. So, and I'll zoom in a little bit so that's more easily seen. So this is version 6. So between the 5 districts, there's less than 2%. It's 1.87% difference in the population between the lowest district and the district with the highest population. Your minority majority districts both have 52% or more than 52% minorities residing in those districts.
And would you say, I know you spent a lot of time on this,
Yes.
would you say that's of the things you looked at, would you say that's the highest you think you could probably get this?
What's the highest?
The minority majority percentage composition?
I don't know.
I mean,
And I'll tell you why. And I think it's important that I tell you why. There are several other factors that played into shaping the districts like they did, like they're currently shaped. And while the minority majority priority for the board was one thing that, you know, we took into account. It was not the only thing. And, you know,
Well, you've got the issue of continuous.
yes,
You've got the issue of not having weird boundaries.
that's correct.
You've got,
And keeping each commissioner in a district.
and you have that as well.
There were
So-
several legal considerations and priorities from the board that I took into account for all of it.
And all, the point I'm making is with all those constraints, this is probably a very high, one of the highest ways you can do this. From your experience.
Way to do
It's version 6, as I said before, is one of the other versions. It meets the priorities of the Board of Commissioners and most of the legal requirements for redistricting. But when you look at it on its surface and you're not looking at the consent decree, it may contain some deficiencies in other areas. But it is, if you look at the statistics, statistically, it's the most even population and it's the highest percentage in the minority majority districts.
That's the point I wanted to hear you make.
Any other questions or comments?
So our options today are to vote for one of these and establish it
Well, at least,
prior to a public hearing even.
right.
I mean, that's an option. The other option is to wait until after the public hearing and then make a decision. Or to revert to the PRTC version. Or to get out a big piece of white paper and start drawing lines again. Right? Is that basically?
Right, I wouldn't necessarily say a formal vote because our opinion or thoughts could change after a public hearing. But we would need to have a consensus if we're going to do one map for the public hearing. Or we have consensus that we'll have all the maps for the public hearing.
Would we make a presentation at the public hearing similar to what the county commissioner did today,
County manager.
county manager?
I mean, I certainly can do that if the
That's
board
the board's
would like.
wishes, yes.
I think that's important because just throwing a map up there and saying, here it is. I don't think that does the public any
And this,
favor.
whatever, a map or all the maps will go out as soon tomorrow at some point, and will go on our website
Yes.
tomorrow.
Whatever the board asks us to put on the county website tomorrow to be considered for at the public hearing, that's what we'll put on the website.
My recommendation would be to put out 3 maps with the associated statistics with them for public viewing. The existing, the PRTC version and version 6. And then have,
TCRC cuts one commissioner out, and what they, you know, I don't know if you can throw that out there or not.
Well, I know that was one reason the board asked our county manager to look at redoing that map, was that very reason. I mean, that was an area we wanted to try to keep a commissioner in each district.
I think if you throw a bunch of those maps out there, you're going to confuse the public a whole lot more than what they might already be.
I think what we'll go with it. This last version is what the manager's in.
Commissioner Hall, I mean, this really affects maybe,
Yes, I agree that we should go with just one map. Because there'll be a lot of confusion. And there'll be those that will try to take advantage of the confusion. And they'll say to you, Mr. Chairman, you need to delay this for X number of reasons. And that won't serve any good purpose. I'm sure that there'll be those that question District 4. But with the county manager's presentation, with all of the relevant information, it can be explained.
I've received several questions already about District 4. And a couple of things that I'll show you real quick is when you look at the section here, if you can, I'll wait for it to catch up. If you look at the section here, down through here and then back up through here, that's in District 4. The minority population in that, it's not a minority majority district, but that is a 28, that consists of 28% minorities in that geographic area. If you look in any other section of Pelham and you try to extrapolate that same number of total population, I think there's about 1,007 people in this area. Let me make sure that's right. Okay, let's. So 1,149 is what I have now. 1,149 people. That's about 28% minorities. If you look at any other portion of Pelham, you come up with between 20 and 22% minorities in that. So if you would apply any other part of Pelham to that minority majority district, other than the district that's highlighted here, you reduce the minority majority percentage by 2%.
Mr. Chairman, I think the other thing that's very important is Mr. Jeffers' question relative to where do I vote? I don't think that was in your initial presentation, but it'll be critical that people understand that you vote in your current precinct and that the Board of Elections will make the adjustment for balance.
right,
So you don't have to travel 30 miles to vote. And that's very important.
right. So make sure we can get that in that presentation, Catamount.
I will. After my conversation with the Board of Elections Director, he gave me a lot of good information this morning. The Board of Election, they're not going to really know where people will vote until the redistricting is finished and they can tabulate how many people should be voting in that one voting precinct, how many registered voters they have in that precinct. Like I said, I think the magic number he said was about 3,000. So some of that will be determined by how you redistrict. as a. So I don't know that I can give you a definitive answer on that, but I can tell you that people vote in their voting precinct. So I don't think people that live in Yanceyville will have to travel to some more to vote.
I think the key to that is whatever the numbers come out. If there's more than 3,000, then it's up to the Board of Elections to let this board know that we may have to need another $5 or $10 to reprint, to fill all of these out.
Sure,
We can't just ignore it.
absolutely.
Okay, so, Commissioner Jeffers, how do you feel about the maps as far as what we will put on the website? Think just putting one, or?
I agree with putting one on there as long as it's good input, but I just make my point, well, I don't have a problem with that. And also, I think we need to do something before the election to let the people know where they have to go to vote. I mean, this is very important. I get it, I want to vote on this, but I can't be another vote. It just won't work.
Just one that.
Okay, well, that's consensus of the board there, so that's what we will proceed with, putting the last map on the website and presenting that at the public hearing. Any,
With the statistics.
yes, with statistics, yes.
Do you want all the statistics or just the statistics for that map?
I think just for that map,
Just for that map.
I would think. I think you'd run into the same issue, you start throwing up
I
the
think so
other
too.
one, so.
Yeah, you all convinced me that the 3 maps is too many, so.
All right, any further comments or questions? If not, I guess we've concluded the business we needed to take care of today, County Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That'll be presented at the public hearing by the last map.
Yes, that map will go on our website tomorrow. And then it will be presented at the public hearing Monday night, Monday morning, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, can we get a consensus of the board that version 6 is our choice, our preferred version? Can we ask for a consensus like that?
Yeah, I would assume what we just did,
Well,
if we're willing to put that one, only one on, but we can do that. Okay, all right, so you would like a consensus of,
Version 6 as our selection.
all right. Version 6, the last version, yes, 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 okay, so it's 6. Okay.
Now, should we include that in as part of the public hearing, or, I mean, it will be as far as the minutes of this meeting on?
I don't,
I guess,
I think it's,
I'd like to have some discussion on that.
I would assume that when the public hearing starts and the county manager is gonna lead the public hearing, he's gonna say, or I hope he would say, that it was the consensus of the board that we start here, or that we use this map. That's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
Right. So,
So yeah, naturally, you're gonna do that if we agree to present it.
all right, if nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, just one more thing.
Yes, sir.
This is, the redistricting process is a very tedious and technical process. I would encourage any members of the public that had questions about the process or about individual census tracts, or anybody that had questions overall about redistricting, to contact me tomorrow. I'm happy to answer any questions the public may have. My office number, I'll be in my office tomorrow and be able to answer those questions by phone or in person.
Okay, thank you. because I surely can't answer the census tracts questions. I'm sorry, but I don't understand enough about them to do that. All right, thank you, County Manager. All right, need a motion to adjourn. We have a motion, need a second. Second, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
We now stand adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. And